This week, I had the honor and the privilege of joining SABI at their 50th anniversary Congress. I was invited to speak briefly about the importance of standing in unity for the same cause. Even though, by the very nature of business, we so often meet each other as competitors. But the future isn't mine or ours to own alone. The future is ours, collectively. And so it calls us collectively to make sure it is still there for us and for the generations who arrive, long after we are gone. That's a calling bigger than any one of us, and the calling like that will always need a unified approach. I would say, to the same mission. We work together in the present so that we can build the road to the future whose very condition depends on what we choose to do right now. It's a similar message to the one I shared at the SDG Global Youth Summit a while back. So once again, Sabi, thank you for hosting me, or rather, thank you for including me in your space and on your agenda. I honestly learned a lot. There were so many keynotes and industry leaders sharing genuinely valuable insights, deep industry knowledge that honestly I wouldn't do justice to if I tried to summarize it here. But there was one topic, the almost obvious one, I would want to say, that I do want to expand on. And keep this in mind, you do not have to be in agriculture or irrigation for this to matter to you. And the topic is AI. We all know the topic. There were a lot of questions in that room, a lot of uncertainty, and I think a fair amount of confusion about how to actually apply and adopt it. And as a business strategy consultant, someone who builds these adoption strategies for a living, among other things, I wanted to do my part and expand on it from an angle that I believe is relevant today to every single one of us. So let's start with the first question. Is AI adoption optional? To answer that, we need to zoom out. Over the centuries, humanity has moved through very different economic eras. To name just a few, the agricultural era, the industrial era, and the digital age or era that we are now in. And now what I'd call the kind of like artificial or AI era, though we're still very much inside the digital one. Here's the one thing we know to be true. Every economic era arrives with its own set of rules. And regardless of how we feel about those rules, history shows us the same thing again and again. The moment we ignore them, we quietly disqualify ourselves from that era. Each era brings new rules. Some are built on top of the previous ones, some are brand new, and some outright disproves the rules of the era before. And the warning has always been the same. If you insist on playing by the rules of the previous era, two things happen. First, no innovation takes place. And second, maybe more importantly, your existence simply isn't perceived as valuable by the people living in that new era. And we all know by now that perceived value matters far more than our own opinion of ourselves or the product we think we've built. So let me put it in simple example. I want to use a business and its marketing. Think back to the days of the yellow pages. Businesses insisted, right? We remember the yellow pages. Businesses insisted to list their numbers and their address in that big book. And that was marketing. Then the internet arrived, and everyone who refused to come along because it was unfamiliar, even though they still offered the same value, the same service, the same product, often to a world that still needed them, ran into serious challenges and serious consequences. The one who adopted the innovation got to move forward. Then the digital era gave us social media marketing. Those who refuse to adopt it face exactly the same consequences. Then social media evolved into interest media that we see today, and today marketing has shifted again into what we call SEOX, which in essence means search everywhere optimization. And when you don't adopt it, you get the same drop off, and it's just happening a lot faster. That's just one example of what happens when you don't adopt the new rules. No matter how much you value your value is still offer, whether we like the rules, whether we think they're fair, whether we're anxious about how fast we're expected to adopt, none of that makes them any more or any less real. It's a rule book. We have to follow for the sake of innovation and honestly, for the sake of the business itself. Now, if we actually look at those economical eras side by side, there's a pattern worth remembering. Each era shifts how humans work, how we live, how we create value. Reject the core shift and you drift into irrelevance. Embrace it and it unlocks growth. The agricultural era was a society built on farming, land, and manual labor. It lasted around 10,000 years from roughly 8000 BCE or BC until the late 1700s. Its rules were simple. Land was power, wealth came from owning fertile soil, work ran on muscle, human hands, and animals, markets were local, and consumed what you grew or traded it nearby. And tradition, tradition guided everything. Skills passed down through families, generation to generation. But then came the industrial era, a society built on factories, machines, and mass production. It lasted around 250 years from the late 1700s, fading out in the late 1900s. And the rules changed completely. Now, scale won. Big factories made goods faster and cheaper than any small shop. Capital drove growth. Real wealth came from owning the machines and the factories. Labor became standardized. Repetitive tasks on a time schedule, and global transport, railways and ships moved goods across the world. And then the digital era, a society built on computers, built on data, and instant global connection, only about 50 years old, from the late 20th century and still running today. And again, new rules. Information became power. Data and speed matter more than physical size. Networks scaled instantly. Software could reach the whole world at zero extra cost. Constant adaptation became survival. Skills changed so fast that lifelong learning is non-negotiable. And creation decentralized. Suddenly, anyone with a screen could build a global business. Look at those three, and the dropouts become obvious. And it was almost never because those people lost interest in the new era. It was because they refused to accept its new rules. And here's the biggest mistake we're making right now. We are trying to run a business in the digital era using the rules of the industrial era. And that, honestly, is what makes a business obsolete. Now, the digital era, which you could argue we're still very much a part of, has shifted at an incredible pace, right? What used to be Facebook and social media very quickly became interest media. And while we're still inside the digital era, the rules have already updated to a new version, call it version 2.0, which we now call the AI era. The AI era living inside the digital one. And here's the good news for us, right? AI actually comes with a roadmap of the stages still to come. Because AI isn't one era, it is several eras. The biggest mistake we make is seeing it as a single event, one finish line, so we measure ourselves against the ultimate outcome and conclude that we're miles away from it. Nothing could be further away from the truth. The reality is we're already living in it. We just refuse to believe it affects us as of just yet. And so, by our own choice, we become spectators instead of adopters of AI. The way I see it, AI has three broad stages that I want to talk about. The first is narrow AI, ANI, which refers to artificial narrow intelligence, sometimes called weak AI. This is single task AI. To use a deliberately simple example, it is using ChatGPT just to write a piece of copy. One tool, one job. That's where most people are still only dipping their toes. But we've already moved past that. And most people never even adopted that first step. We're now in the first phase of agentic AI, the stage on the road to AGI, which is artificial general intelligence, where AI doesn't just do one task, it can carry out multiple step work and genuinely take on our basic day-to-day duties. And beyond that sits ASI, which is artificial superintelligence. That's the stage where AI can train and improve itself without our input. It sounds far away, and yet we're already seeing models find bugs in their own systems and fix them before we even think to ask. And here's a trap I see constantly as a consultant. We measure AI against that final ASI step, or stage rather, because that's what the videos show us. We see a fully automated farm run entirely by robots, and we measure our willingness to adopt against that image. But that couldn't be farther away from what's actually being asked of us. All we need to do is adopt the new rules of the stage we're in right now, because AI isn't coming, it is actually right here. Which brings me to the next natural question. Will AI take our jobs? To be fair, that's not really a question about AI. It's a question about the economic era itself and its rules, because it's the exact same question people have asked at every single shift. It's what people ask from moving from the agricultural era to the industrial one. It's what we ask moving from industrial to digital. And deep down, I think we know the answer. We know what has always been true, and I believe it'll stay true, at least for the next 20 years or so. Although, in fairness, we're moving at such a rapid pace that I'd say the answer holds for society and humanity in general, while for you as the individual, the reality could look completely different. We have to be mindful of the adoption rate of a new era, which honestly is largely about being out of our hands. But history reminds us of something important. Every single era ultimately created more jobs than it destroyed. Yes, it has absolutely wiped some of the jobs out completely. So from an economical point of view, the outcome has always been positive. But from a personal point of view, it turns into a much sharper question. Are you skilled enough to be valid in the new era? Because I genuinely believe there is work for you. It's the skills requirement, which is now very AI centric, that's going to be up to you to meet. We know the tractor replaced the animal. We know the machine operator meant fewer hands were needed. And yet over time, we still saw more and more jobs created out of exactly those shifts. But, and this is a warning, AI era doesn't give us 10, 15 years to prepare. It gives us 1, 2 to maximum 3 years to get our ducks in a row. Let me give you a couple of examples that I'm watching right now. Take vibe coding, for example. Vibe coding, which in essence is the ability to speak in plain language to an AI and have it build your app, your website, or your product in actual code for you. There have been countless arguments from trained developers that this is unsafe and that it will take, their jobs. But the opposite has come true. The easier it became to build solutions, the more solutions poured into the world and the more problems got solved. Just think about all of the new software and tools you see appearing every single day. And with all of that, more developers' jobs were actually created, not fewer. Copywriting was on the verge of extinction, supposedly killed off by ChatGPT and AI, and yet, precisely because so much AI writing lost its personality, copywriters have never been in high demand and their salaries have almost tripled, with one strong condition that they are AI literate, which, by the way, is a new skill available to every one of us. Or look at the consulting world, and here you really need to put yourself in this position and zoom right in on the post-retirement consultant. For years, we've watched key, experienced people retire at 65 because of age and company policy, only to be brought straight back to consult to that very same company, or at least the very same industry. For the last decade or so, that's been the dream for anyone retiring: staying relevant, keeping your purpose, adding value, and to be honest, often earning more than you did before. The dream, right? But that opportunity now becomes at a much higher entry price. Your knowledge alone is no longer your superpower. Your ability to implement it, your experience in action, that is. And only on one condition: that it's AI friendly. Without even a basic AI skill set, that ideal, the one that worked so beautifully in the previous era, is becoming much harder to reach. And honestly, that's a skill anyone can learn. Trust me. The last three companies I consulted for on HR and recruitment all moved to a new principle. And this is what modern organizations are busy doing. And I'd argue what they actually should be doing. Let me set it up first, right? The resume and the technical qualification were the standard operating procedure of the industrial era. We basically use them to say, we have a machine that needs an operator, so we need someone trained to operate that machine. And for a long time, that worked beautifully. But that recipe started to fail because inside a company, it's things like culture, relationships, adaptability, proactive reasoning, and accountability that are needed almost everywhere. And the missing technical skills can actually just be trained on the job. So learning on your past experience and your university degree is no longer what makes you unique. That's fair game for everyone now. And depending on the industry, it's replaceable by AI, or worse, replaceable by a person with AI, which means a lot of people could suddenly actually do your job. So new companies now recruit in a completely new order. First, they check for culture fit. Do you fit the culture of the team? Then EQ, where in the team do you actually belong? Then they test a skill live, and honestly, most of them no longer even ask for past experience or technical qualifications up front. No resume, because they want to see it in action first. Only then, and only where it's genuinely needed, do they ask for the resume. Now, picture that same process with AI ability added into the criteria, and it's already happening. We're seeing it. So ask yourself honestly, if you had to interview yourself against those criteria, would you hire you? Because AI skills, a native basic understanding of AI, including using it every day, is now officially a requirement that's already being insisted on. Here's the real problem with how we see AI. We look at it as the finished, comprehensive end result. So we naturally put ourselves at a disadvantage, or worse, disqualify ourselves entirely by thinking it's only the future. But AI already lets every one of us solve real world problems today. When we work with clients across every industry, we always recommend a flow that's easy to adopt for every skill level in every division across every industry for every age and every role. It has nothing to do with age. At XGAP, we've trained 60 and 70-year-olds just as successfully as 20-year-olds. So here's our recommendation from XGAP on how to actually adopt AI. And honestly, you could and you really should already be doing this. The first step isn't to go and solve all the world's problems. It's to buy back your own time. It's freeing yourself up so you can be more present in the places and with the teams that actually need your presence, that needs your leadership and your knowledge. Every repeated task, every email, every bit of paperwork that runs on a loop, even one with variables, every task someone else could be doing, AI should be doing at this very moment. Admin can be streamlined and automated to buy back as much as 68% of the time you currently spend on it and hand you back to the high value, knowledge-driven work only you can do. This was me. My company used to take on one joint venture a year. This year alone, if I can say, with the same team, we took on 13. Your time is worth so much more when you spend it on the right things. Then, only then, still just you or your immediate team, you are ready for the second step. Solving your own problems. Any recurring problem can be solved or simplified with automation, agentic assistance, and predictive data and analytics. Moving communication and information fast enough that vetted, validated decisions can be made far quicker. And this compounds in your business. One of our clients built an MVP or an operating system. We helped them to do so for his farm on exactly this method. A data-driven validated decision used to take him on average 2.3 days, that's what we measured, to make. Now it takes him 40 minutes to vet the data and apply the call. Just imagine how that compounds and what it heals. The third step is where we scale it from personal use into a real functional tool. This is where you can own your own software. You cut downtime, ramp up your data and predictions, and save serious money on subscription costs. With AI, a custom MVP, your own operating system, lets you run your operations on a simple, personally designed platform. It allows you to sync your data and save millions in subscription fees. Software that runs on your logic, personalized to your system and to your environment. The fourth step is marketing. On the 20th of May, Google changed the rules of the game. Marketing now runs on a completely new strategy. If you didn't know, you should seriously check that out. The old rules simply don't apply anymore. If your marketing strategy was set in stone before the 20th, it's already outdated. And the good news is this: because of AI and the new rules and penalties Google now enforces, marketing has actually become more effective, cheaper, and it automatically weeds out the scammers. But if you haven't implemented the new SEOX strategy, Google now, in harsh terms, sees you as the scammer, because the strategy is no longer about what you say about yourself. It's about what others say about you in third-party mentions. I did a whole video on that one, so just go check it up on YouTube. The fifth step is where the future actually begins: scaling with data. This is the real innovation adoption phase. You take the AI knowledge of the individual, the time you freed up, the processes you've automated, and your personal MVP, and you build an architecture around them, an entire ecosystem of AI, machines, and technology working together. That ecosystem is usually what we picture when we imagine AI. But we keep skipping it because, and this is very important, because we never laid the fundamentals underneath it. Because here's the thing: most people are still using AI wrong. People are using it as a glorified Google replacement. AI is here. It is not coming. And the best news of all, it is genuinely, truly adoptable by every single one of us, every single one of you watching this video right now. So start today. If you need assistance, reach out to us. We will be happy to assist you in getting those first principles right, buy back your time, solve your problems, and then worry about the agentic movement into the supernatural, I would say, AI environment. But upskill yourself, be relevant. It's within the expectations of the new era rules, and it's up to us as individuals to make that decisions on our own.